everybody, welcome back for the who knows how manyth time on the podcast. James Appleton, he's been putting in the work, hunting lately. This is the Aptitude Outdoors podcast, where we interview conservationists, hunters, anglers, and outdoorsmen and women to bring you the greatest stories, information, and advice from the best in the world. I don't know if we did this podcast last year because I didn't get a deer, but we've done it every year that I've gotten a deer. And our stories overlap. If people want to know more about our backgrounds and how we met each other, they can go way back in the podcast list, back when the early days of both of our podcasts. We both kind of have this like backpacker, hiker background turned hunter. And it's become massive passions for both of us. We're both really into bow hunting, gun hunting, whatever it turns into, we kind of go that route. So James, you have been, and I know you're putting out an episode specifically about this on your podcast this week. So I don't want to kill the mystery and suspense of that episode, but for the last couple of years, your goal since you started deer hunting was to get a buck. And the last couple of years you've gotten a few does and stuff, but you want to get that Adirondacks buck. So why the buck? Why is that such a special goal for you?
Well, for starters, we did do real quick. Let me rewind. We did do this episode last year. So this is our third annual hunting episode. We talked about, because you had been doing lots of hunting last year too. You just didn't get a deer, but you were out doing a lot of waterfowl and other stuff. So you were doing stuff. Yeah, it's good. It's good to be back here on the Aptitude Outdoors podcast. So this buck this year that I finally got was the Adirondack buck. Like, that's what I was trying to get. Like, I didn't, I got another buck years ago, but like it didn't really mean anything. It's a deer, so that's great. But I'm saying, like, I have been trying so hard to get an Adirondack buck because it is just hard hunting here. It's hard areas. It's big woods. It's rugged. Adirondack, 6 million acres. It's just like, it's difficult. So for me, and this is where I live, that's why it meant more. Like, it's it's an 8 point, we'll call it a medium sized buck, it's 2.5 years old. So not a big buck, but like, this will mean more to me than, and I could get a 6-year-old buck in Ohio one day and it wouldn't mean nearly the same as like this Adirondack big woods buck will mean to me. So like, this is where I live. This is where I hunt. This is where I like bleed the tactics and the techniques that people use to hunt here, and the adventure. Like, I'm out there in the woods for 2 reasons: for meat and for mountain adventure. So this is what it was, and it worked out very well this year in 2023, and I couldn't be more stoked about it. Season's not over yet, but no, and that was bow season, so there's still rifle season to get it done, doing a different style of hunting, which I actually prefer. I love shooting my bow, and I'm more comfortable, honestly, shooting my bow than shooting a rifle because I practice so much more with the bow just in my backyard. But man, when you're on the so I like to track in the snow because that's where the mountain adventure comes. And that is so exciting. And that's kind of like your Adirondack hunting tactic. So, as the season progresses here, we'll get some snow. I'll be out doing that, tracking. And that is where that's where it's fun. That's where my joy comes from hunting. Yeah,
and my favorite part of the day during hunting season is I know the second I wake up, I'm going to have a Snapchat from James Appleton, like Blair Witch style, like, I'm in the woods, it's 4 a.m. and there's a buck and I can see him. It's like the best part of the day. And then like 3 hours later, you'll send me a video of you butchering a deer. I'm like, that's what I like to see, baby. So
if only it was that easy or that often.
It's that easy to me because I just see the Snapchats and they're wonderful. So
that's true.
The cool thing about you is that not a lot of people do is that when you do something, you just go all in, and we're very similar in that aspect. That's why we're such good friends. Is like we both, when we're into something, there's no like, I'm going to do 50%. It's like 250%. And it's just like very obvious because not only you both pretty much started hunting around the same time, I would think, like seriously.
Yeah.
And then you got a deer the 1 year, 3 years ago, apparently. And then you did everything yourself from day one. You butchered the deer, like you do all this, like, And I think that's really important because it kind of makes that connection between you, the resource, and what you're doing. Because and there's nothing wrong with getting your deer processed. I mean, it saves you so much time and energy. And like, if you have the financial means, then you want to do it. That's totally fine too. But you and I are both very big on like knowing how to learn and do skills. Like it's literally in the name of this show, Aptitude Outdoors, the skills of being an outdoorsman or woman or whatever you want. And like that's super important to me to learn how to know the ins and outs. So this year I butchered my deer. Last year or the year before I didn't because I didn't have time. I was traveling. I was like, I had to go somewhere. I didn't have time to do it at home. It was like 2 days before I left for Florida or something. Like I just didn't have time to do it. And this year I did it all myself, and it's a great learning process. I actually called you to ask like, where's this cut of steak at? And we were like talking over the phone while I have blood all over my hands. It's awesome. Nice. So why do you prefer to do it all yourself?
Well, it's kind of, I mean, for starters, not everyone has the space. Like I have a house, so I hang the deer outside on a tree, and then I eventually move it in the garage, and then eventually to the kitchen table. So like, there's a bit of a process, but not everyone has that kind of, you need the space, even though you can quarter the deer appropriately and take it and put in coolers in your house if you're like in an apartment or whatever. But for me, it's the same thing with why I started hunting in general. It's just like, I wanted to add to my woods adventures. I am an absolutely obsessed carnivore. I don't eat officially as the carnivore diet, but pretty damn close. I am a meat eater through and through, unapologetically. So there's that element which also led me very organically into hunting, and I've always been around it here. Like, I mean, you live here; it's just like a part of life. So like, it wasn't really a thing. It was just, okay, let's start doing it. My dad is not a big outdoors guy, so I didn't grow up around that at home, but like in the town, it's just the normal thing. But for me, like processing it myself was all part of the desire to be self-sufficient and self-reliant. Like, I want to know how to do this just the same way you might want to learn how to work on your car. You might want to learn to do that. So I want to be able to provide for myself. I want to be able to do everything start to finish. I'll tell you, dude, it is satisfying when you hunted, shot, processed, butchered, put it in the freezer, and you did it all yourself. I mean, it's very, very, and then you take it out to eat it, dude. It's just very, very fulfilling. And it's a skill. Like, let's have it. Like, we should have these skills. We should be able to provide for ourselves. Let's be a little less reliant on the government and the grocery store and whatnot. So that's really why I prefer to process. And it's just part of the process. And fortunately, every time I'm home and I get a deer, I'm able to, because I travel for work, but fortunately I've been able to, process it myself. But sometimes I get it. Some got to bring it to the processor. The thing that kind of surprises me, I will be honest with you, is when people have been lifelong hunters and they themselves have never done it. That always surprises me. Like, I get it if you've done it for 20 years and you're just like, okay, I don't want to do it anymore. Okay, I'll give you that. But when you've never done it, that always has me scratching my head saying, that seems bizarre. It doesn't seem like it kind of adds up, but to each their own, I suppose. But that's the reason that I like to. I just want to be self-reliant as much as possible in life in general. But when it comes to this, it's like as natural as anything. I mean, you're like, it's your food. It's your freaking food. So.
Well, I mean, this is, sometimes I say things that are mildly intelligent. It's few and far between. My last episode I did was how I butchered my own deer. And it was like the first time I've ever done it on my own. Like, in the past, I've had a buddy show me. We kind of like worked through it together. And then last year, or the year before, or 2 years ago, I took it to a butcher because I didn't have time. And this year, like, I had the time. I wasn't going anywhere. I really wanted to do it myself. And it can feel a little overwhelming at first, especially your first time. You know what I mean? Because you're by definitely. Yourself, and there's just this animal there, and that it's like dead hanging in your garage, and you're like, well, this is going to be a day. Like, you got to basically set aside a day if you've never done this before, and like just figure it out. But like, I watched a quick YouTube video on how to peel the skin off correctly. Like, there's no correct way, but like effectively, I guess, without the easiest way. Sure. And that took me about an hour. I'm like, okay, that made sense. And then you get to once the skin comes off, it doesn't look like a deer anymore. It's just a meat. It's just a
Yeah.
food. It's
just
you know what I
hanging
mean?
meat. That's what it is.
Transforms. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's
so
just
like
hanging meat just in a, like in the cooler that, you're just like, it's like the scene from Rocky when he's in the butchers and he's just like walking through with all the cows. It's just like dead meat hanging there. It's great though.
Yeah.
It's
you just want to punch it and
punch it, take a bite, all those things.
So like once you get the quarters off, like the legs off, and then you get the neck off, and then it's just this big core center part of the deer, like the main torso of the body. Once you get that on a table, it just is like, oh, yeah, this makes sense because the muscles kind of like naturally separate from one another. Like you have to do a little bit of cutting here and there to pull them away from bone and things like that. But like the backstrap, like people talk about, oh, the backstrap this, the backstrap that. It comes off as just like one big piece. And you're like, you kind of like put the knife along like it's almost like filleting a fish. Like you put the knife along the edge and you just kind of like, oh, this whole giant thing comes out and it's a giant steak. And like, I found it to be very intuitive. And I don't know if that's baked into our DNA as human beings, because that's the majority of our time on this planet was spent doing that. Like, I don't know if if that's just like a philosophical like bullshit that I come up with in my head, but it felt very, very natural and it didn't feel weird. It was like, this made more sense than most things I do. Like writing, that's like a chore, but like cutting a deer up, dude, that felt like I could do this every day. Like this just feels like what I should be doing right now. And I don't know if I'm just a little too poetic with that shit, but I don't know if you feel that way or.
I felt like for me, it's like there wasn't a lot of, there's some pressure because, hunting season comes once a year. It's hard to get an animal, period. So it's like, you don't want to mess it up. But also when you're the only one eating it, or it's like, it's your family eating it. I mean, you can't really mess it up. It's because it's like, it's low pressure in that situation. It's not like you're selling this to somebody or like at like a butcher at a restaurant or a store. And it's like, no, this has to be correct. It's like, I'll still eat it if I mangle this steak or this, like it'll still get eaten. And then there's always like just throwing it in the grind pile. But I find, it's also too, it's, the animal, it doesn't change. So the more you do it one after another, it becomes, oh, I remember this. I remember this. I remember this. And then it's really just, you just do it. But yeah, you just learn where the muscles are and just slowly start to just cut away, cut and pull. And then it just kind of comes apart. It's actually fascinating. That feeling too, as you like pull the muscles apart, as you're slicing something off, it's very satisfying as well. It's like a weird feel, hard to describe, hard to explain, but I do feel I wouldn't personally say it's intuitive in the sense of like, if you don't know that, but I do think with a little bit of research, watching a video or two, you can do it yourself. 100%. Yeah. Well, and again, at the end of the day, you mess up, grind pile, and that will taste good too.
I just spent so many hours filleting fish that I'm just kind of like, yeah, this just makes sense. Like you just follow the bones. That stuff's meat. Everything else is bones. Like there's nothing real. Once you get the guts out, there's like nothing in there that's like quote unquote what people would consider gross, even though you can eat 99% of the guts too. But like, it's just funny when you're in there, it's just like this, especially once the bones are gone, you're like, this is just like, I could buy this at the store. You know what I mean? Absolutely.
Well, also too, you see some of the, once you cut them up into steaks and like they look pretty and you've made it look nice too, like aesthetically pleasing. It's just meat, just like you get at the store. 100%.
Yeah. The grinding is what sucks.
The nice deep red too. It's like, oof.
Deep.
Also, if you're cooking any wild game more than medium rare, just get out, dude. Enough. Medium rare at most. Little rare is not going to hurt you. It's going to taste better.
I went to a restaurant with some guys doing some filming out west. One of the guys ordered a well done burger, and I was like, "What are you doing, my dude?
Yes.
This is raw. This should be illegal."
That's a disrespect to the cow.
I'm calling the cops right now.
Absolutely, you should. No, my mother-in-law is like, she is all about well done, dude. Whether it's steak, dude. Whether it's burgers, whether it's cookies, who wants a freaking well done cookie? No, everyone wants like a slightly undercooked doughy cookie. She even wants her cookies well done. I don't understand the thought process.
Dude, if I wanted to eat a shoe, I would go to the shoe store, man. No way. I'm no well done for me ever. But anyway, enough about that. So this is going to not be on the topic of hunting, but I want to talk about it because
let's do it.
I think
there's no rules, dude. This is podcasting. This is the Wild West. There's no rules to this.
Well, I just want to put it out there that you are consistently the most consistent person I know. And that is one of the hardest things to find. Like, we talk a lot. I would say almost every day, if not like most days of the week. Not always about outdoor stuff either. I mean, we're both trying to do personal growth, business, like all these things that we're trying to do. We just happen to do at the same time, just like in pure chance. And I think it's really awesome that we have so many things in common, but we also kind of keep each other in check because you are there's no other way to put it, an animal of a human being. You are every day at 6 a.m., 5 a.m., you're up doing your workout before your kids get up, before the responsibility of the day, which is like tough to do. I don't have kids. I work out when I feel like it. I go to the gym at 3, 5, 7, whatever. It just depends on what I'm doing during the day.
Sure.
But I try, like, when I have a day where I am like, we all have them. There's a day where it's just like, dude, I'm beat. I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to get up and read this book today. Like, I'm just mentally tired. And then I'm like, James would absolutely call me an absolute bitch if I didn't do this today. And then like, we kind of have that like relationship. We're trying to keep each other in check. And I know you're building the Seek to Do More program, which is a great tool for any outdoorsman, I would say, because it's going to get you, not only get your ass in shape to get out there and hunt, which most of you need to do. Okay, let's call a spade. And then like, it's also encouraging educating yourself. And if anybody listens to this podcast, they know I'm all about reading books. There's a lot to be said about not only practicing what you preach, but like understanding the topics as well. And like the Seek to Do More program is awesome. And I know that you've built that basically from scratch by yourself.
Hey, what's up, everyone? James Appleton here, co-founder of Absolute Aid. Welcome to the Seek to Do More program. This program will help you help yourself by developing the daily habits that will elevate your entire life. Over the next 30 days, you'll complete the doers list every single day. And the doers list includes 1, do something physical. 2, follow and stick to your diet of choice. 3, read a real book. 4, further your education on purpose. 5, dedicate time to your spiritual life. And 6, dedicate time to your hobbies. So if you're ready to take a structured, proven approach to build the daily habits that will allow you to get the most out of yourself, your time, and your life every single day, the Seek to Do More program is your blueprint. So make a choice, commit to yourself, sign up below, and let's get started.
So why did this change come for you of building this like mindset of just like being very strict with yourself to the point of, it's a daily routine? And how has it become easier for you over the years? Because we both used to be fat. Like, we both used to be fat asses, and you can offend anybody you want. Like, it's hard work, but you're never going to get to that point where you're at now without making significant life changes.
Yeah. It really has come down to, for me, like you said, like, yeah, dude, I was 3 bills, 6 feet tall, needing to lose weight. Eventually a daughter came and was like, okay, dude, it's time to fix this. So I went to work and started fixing it. And then year after year, I just didn't stop, because what am I going to do? Freaking backtrack and put the weight back on like 90% of people who lose, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 pounds. Like, the statistics for that most people put it back on are staggering. So for me, it's just like, I just kept going and I kept fighting and trying not to backtrack. So it all stemmed for me, or began for me, from needing to lose weight for the obvious reasons. Like, let's stop being a bitch. Let's stop being a fat ass, because now you have somebody that needs you, as a dad, especially a dad of a girl, you are the gold standard of males in her life. So it's like, okay, what you going to be you going to set the bar high, or are you going to set the bar low? What are you going to do? It's your call. So it's like, oh shit, I got to set the bar high. So for me, and it's to this day, why do I get up in the morning? Because every freaking morning that I get up is another day that I'm refusing to backtrack, because, quite frankly, dude, I don't want to put it back on the weight. I don't want to go backwards. And it honestly, dude, it terrifies me, the thought of putting the weight back on. I have a buddy of mine who he lost like 130 pounds, went from, I think, like 330 to like 198, 195, and homie's 330 again. And he's depressed. And it's like, dude, I get it. To lose that much weight, put it back on. Like, I understand that would be depressing. And that's why, like, I fight like hell not to go back. So for me, Seek to Do More it kind of came out of this natural thing that I built over the years, which was just being consistent. But I'm being consistent because I don't want to go backwards, and I want to always be going forward. And, there might be days where you didn't eat right. There might be days where, you didn't get your training in, even though for me, training is always the foundation. It's always, to me, it's like, it's what has to happen. So for me, it's like every single day, no matter the schedule, no matter what I'm dealing with, if I get my workout in, okay, you just went one, you continued. You're still on the horse. You're still in the game. You're still moving. Even if, you might go months at a time, not seeing any sort of real results, but the fact that you're still getting in there will keep you from going backwards. So for me, I just built that consistency from the gym. And then with Seek to Do More, and you're a part of this, is I saw all these other elements in other people's lives that people I admired. It's like, I kind of Frankensteined this kind of lifestyle together, because I saw this person always does this. I really admire that. I want that in my life. I should start doing that. And then this other person always does this. And for me, one of the things that you inspired me with was the reading, because you would be like, oh, I'm having this guest on my podcast this week, and they wrote this book. So I read the book, and that way I have the right questions for them. And I'm like, you read a whole book just to interview someone on your podcast? That was like astounding to me. And then there's another friend of mine who, he's like your typical construction worker type, like every construction worker stereotype you could think of, but the dude hammers books, and you would never expect it. Novels, World War II books, and it was like, dude, you would never expect that about you, but you just hammer these big books. So there's different elements. So I was like, I need to start including this in my own life. So I built off of the foundation of, training and diet and this sort of thing. And I elevated myself to include, okay, now I need to break a mental sweat. I need to enhance my capability, my self-reliance, like going back to hunting. Like the whole point of it is to be more self-reliant. So it's like, okay, if I put into my day and I prioritize time in my day to learn so that I can be a more capable human being, that's only going to benefit me. It's only going to sharpen me. So it's like all these different things kind of came together, but being consistent stemmed from refusing to go backwards. And it could be with anything you're doing, you can read every day, and like that becomes your foundation for, okay, if you read every day, you're actually bettering your mind. You're keeping your brain sharp. Your brain can think. So it's like, okay, take that as your foundation, whereas mine was training, and now add the other elements into your day that you need to improve. Maybe it is training. Maybe your diet's shit, whatever you need to do, but rely on those strengths that you have to build up the weaker areas, because then eventually they'll all become strengths, and that's what it's about. So for me, it all stemmed from training. So I wrote a lot of my own training programs, not at first, but like eventually. So it just made sense for me to like, okay, I'm going to create my own training program now, which is not just a training program, but it's a whole we'll call it a lifestyle program, for lack of a better word. And it was originally 46 days long. That makes sense. Everything I do tends to be 46. And today is day 640, actually. So Jesus. I just have not stopped, and there's no reason to, because Seek to Do More program is sustainable. And that's the whole point. Like, cause going back to the backtracking thing, like what's the point of dropping 50 pounds if you're going to put it back on? There's no point to it actually. In fact, just why waste your time at that point? So, by continuing to move forward little by little, 1 inch at a time, you'll just not go backwards. And that's kind of the whole point of it. So, I made it sustainable, and that's what it's about, because I don't want to go backwards. And if you're doing these things, you build this momentum in your life. You shouldn't go backwards. So you should always be moving forward little by little. And if you try to do these things, because there's other programs out there that people do that, you'll hear they do this program or that program. And then once it was over, they just stopped and then fell off the wagon. It's like, oh, so you're not going to continue building off the momentum you just built. You're just going to or it's like, oh, you did it for a certain amount of days and then you skipped a day. So you failed the program. And now it's like, so you just stopped. You're just not going to even say, okay, let's keep building. No, you're just going to stop. Okay. That makes sense. So yeah, for me, it's sustainability is what matters, because if you're not consistent, if you can't remain consistent, well, then what the hell is the point? So long-winded answer, but of course I'm a podcaster too, just like yourself.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much where the consistency stemmed from. It started with training, losing weight, and then just implementing, okay, what's another layer that I can add? What's something more that I can do and I can add on to this pyramid here, this foundation that I've built. So for me, and you're just as, crucial in my, I try to keep up with you the same way, you said you kind of keep up with me, because it's like, I know, dude, I don't need to hear from you for 2 or 3 days to not, I know what you're doing. I know you are doing exactly what you do. You are hitting the gym. You are reading. I don't need to check in on you, because I know what you're doing. And that's something that I take and I appreciate from you. It sharpens me to know, no, Paul's doing it. We don't even need to hear from him. He's doing what he needs to do. And, I appreciate that as well. So it helps me stay consistent as well. And it's in the last couple of years, you've been a huge, growth factor for me, for sure. 100%.
Wake up early before the sun comes up. Yeah. Then you drink a little coffee, fire the gator tail up, then you hit it on out where no man goes. Gator tail flying.
Well, thanks. And yes, likewise. And I think the amount of times that I want to beat my head into a wall trying to explain that concept to people is so frustrating, because they look at people like you and I as these one-off cases of oh, well, this guy, he's just, he lost 100 pounds. He did this. He built that. He grew this podcast or whatever. They look at this as you're some special person who just has this special skill set. And it's no, the only thing that separates someone from James Appleton from you is that when it sucked, instead of giving up and taking 5 days off and slipping back into bad habits, as you said, okay, today sucked, I'm still going to keep doing it tomorrow.
Yeah.
And the hardest thing I've noticed that people can't wrap their heads around, which is very frustrating, because at the core, it's a very simple process. It's everything is always with the Occam's razor. It really is that simple. Mm-hmm. But people want to make things complex. If you fuck up and have one day that sucks, that doesn't mean you're done for. It means pick back up again tomorrow and start like yesterday never happened. I built the reading aspect into my life because I didn't like reading.
Yeah.
I don't think it was, I didn't like reading, but everybody that I'd listened to or met that was successful at a younger age, when I was in a band out on the road touring, I was we'd stay with people and sometimes we'd end up with people who were really successful and they'd have this mansion and we're staying at some random dude's house. I'm like, how did you do this? What did you do? And he's like, you have to read. The one guy in specifically, we stayed with him for 2 days, and it was one of our bandmates' uncles in Houston, Texas or something. And he was He basically pulled me aside and was like, dude, you're smarter than the rest of these guys. Like I could tell, like they're like not to be arrogant,
bunch of idiots.
He's like these kids are dumb. Like he's like they're just like floating around aimlessly. Like you have the potential. Like they're all in there drinking beer and you're like in the garage practicing your guitar. Like he's like you're on the right track. He's like you just need to focus that. And he's like you need to have a better vocabulary. You need to read. You need to understand different things that aren't in the realm of what you want to do. Like it all comes together long term. So I just started reading after that. I was just like, well, I'm just going to start. It's just like guitar. You pick it up and it sucks and you're bad at it. But the longer you play, you just get better naturally.
Absolutely.
So I was like, I'm going to apply. Everything in my life has been based off what I learned playing guitar. It's like, okay, I'll read a paragraph, put the book down for 10 seconds, read another paragraph, and then it turned into like, I'll read 3 pages a day, and then it turned into, I'll read a chapter a day, and then it turned into, I'll read a book a week, and now it's like, that has been a 10-year process of forcing myself to like to learn, to like to read, and even now it's frustrating. Some of this stuff that I preach on the podcast about these fishing books, it is the most boring shit that you could ever imagine, like literally statistics about fish. Like, how boring. But
I bought a bass fishing book that you recommended. That's like from the 70s. I got it, used on eBay, it's
so boring, isn't it?
but that's the information though. It's like, I'm here for the information, but also you reading, cause you're always reading outdoors books and conservation books and stuff. So like you're channeling that into the things that you're trying to do, that you want to know. And that's the beautiful thing. It's like there's a podcast on every subject you could ever think of. There's also just dozens and dozens and dozens of books on literally every subject you could ever want to know. And, it just opens your mind. Yeah. And it opens your brain. It opens your possibilities to what you can learn, what you can do. And then, that's the problem. The problem is like you grow up in public school reading these books. So you don't quite understand that. Oh, there's actually a bigger picture at play here. Well, actually, teacher, maybe if you assigned 5 to 6 pages of reading instead of 36 pages of reading, when we have a million other things to also do for homework tonight, maybe then you would have instilled this desire to read because it becomes not so overwhelming. The same way you were reading, same way I read. Still to this day, I don't put any rules on how many pages I read. It's just like, pick the book up, start reading. Some days it's 2-3 pages. Some days it's 32 pages. Like it just different. All that matters is, did you pick it up? Because if you can move a little bit each day, you're going to read that book 5 pages a day over a year, read 6 different 300-page books. Most people aren't reading 6 300-page books a year, but just 5 pages a day, a simple little 10-minute, 5-page, reading, it goes a long way. It's no different from training. It's no different from doing anything. Do a little bit at a time, even if you don't want to do it, because you want the outcome. You want the result. It's like you said, like you do things that you don't want to do because you want the result. Well, that's what it's about. So if you quit, you're not going to get the result. If you don't put the effort in, you're not going to get the result that you're looking for. So with reading, with training, with fishing, it's like hunting. It's like you're not going to get the deer when you're sitting on your couch. It's like I might be out there for 40 days this year in the 80K, 45 days. And then eventually it's going to happen. Like 3 or 4 years ago, whatever year, I was out there for 45 days and then I didn't get it done until the end of December somewhere else. It didn't happen. But that caused it to be a lot easier the following year, where I got multiple does during bow season because of things I learned the previous year from pounding the pavement, quote unquote, even though you're pounding the woods, same thing. So it's just like, you got to put the effort in, but it's about the result you're looking for. That's why it's work. Not everything needs to be this freaking pussy, easy, simple, instant gratification world we live in, because that's not going to get you anywhere.
Doesn't help you at all.
It doesn't, dude. And everyone's focused on this. And that's why they don't go to hit the gym, or that's why they don't wake up early to like do X, Y, or Z, or like do something on the days they don't feel like it. It's like, well, that's why you're still the type of person that needs to watch David Goggins videos and needs to watch videos of these other people who are out there doing and being what you aspire to be. I don't need to watch any of that shit, because I know exactly who I am and what I do. I don't need anyone to motivate me or get me outside to do the things I know I need to do because I am that person. And it's only because I did the things I don't want to do. And I still, to this very day, what day is it? Wednesday. I still today am doing it because I want the result and I know what it's going to take, where it's going to take me. So that's ultimately what it comes down to. The instant gratification doesn't get you anywhere. The delayed gratification does, but it's about putting the work in to get the result you're looking for.
Yeah. Well, it's like, if you want the paycheck, you got to put in the work. Right? Nobody's going to pay you if you're sitting on your ass. And like, you and I have had this discussion many times. Like, I do not want to go to the gym most days because it sucks. Like, it's
terrible.
I have made a conscious choice to do the CrossFit stuff because I absolutely fucking hate it. It is the most disgusting, miserable half hour, 45 minutes of my day. My heart rate is through the roof. I can barely walk sometimes. My legs are so beat up, like constantly sore. I'm limping around the house. Takes me 2 minutes to stand up straight because my back's so tight. Like, it is disgusting. And I go to that because it's a daily reminder that, like, you need to put yourself through this shit to get better. You're not like, I also can deadlift 400 pounds for 5 reps because I go all the time. And I'm like you, I don't watch David Goggins. Like, I've read the books and stuff because it's always good to get perspective. Like, yeah, sometimes you read that shit, you're like, oh man, like, obviously I'm not him, but like, I do a lot of these similar things like that, like maybe I'm on the right track. And like, I think that like, you should seek out something that's disgusting. Like, you do that friggin' deadlift carry for like a half mile or whatever you do that's like 300 or 400 pounds or some shit, some insane bullshit you do. That sucks. I don't want to do that. That looks terrible.
It is terrible. I can assure you of that.
Tell the people about that. That's nuts.
It's just my Sunday mornings are my farmer's carry morning. So it's just like you just pick up a certain amount of weight and just walk with it. And I put it down a million times throughout, but it's just it's not about that. It's about, did I finish? That's all that matters. Did you finish? Yup. Because to me, finishing is truly winning. When you quit something, I'm not into that moral victory nonsense. It's not for me. Yeah. So farmer's carry. So I've been doing that for quite some time, but yeah, it's the workout every week that, dude, even on like Friday, I do it Sunday morning. So even on Friday night, I'm like, shit, it's almost Sunday. I got to do that again. And, but then for Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, like, you're riding that high because you overcame this really crappy workout. So it's like, we talk about instant gratification, delayed gratification. And, people don't want to train because it's like, oh, I'm not going to see the results for 6 months. It's like, yeah, but you're also going to get like a mental high that is great. So you still get your instant gratification, but it's a kind of a different form that you might have thought about. And that is a great high that helps you, kind of build momentum into all the other things you're doing throughout the day. But you're not going to get that when it was easy. You're not going to get that when you did something that was like, yeah, anyone could do this. You do it when you do something that's hard. Because you could say all you want that, like, oh, it's only you versus you. That's anyone that just says it's not about anyone else. It's you versus you. Anyone that said that has never done anything, because when you're doing things, when you're waking up early or you're, it's midnight, you just got home from work, but you're going to go to the gym now and you're doing things that 99% of people will not do. I don't care who you are. There is an empowering element to that, knowing like I am out here doing the work to improve my health, to improve my strength, to improve my mental capacity. I'm doing that knowing that most of these other people are, home watching some shitty Netflix show, or they're not willing to do it, but they'll bitch about how they're unhealthy or this or that, or they're always sick. Yeah, you're always sick because your life is trash and you don't train, you don't keep your body healthy, you don't do anything to make it not that. So it's like there's all these different elements. Yeah, sorry, I'm just kind of bitching right now, but also just like on a rant here. You're if you're not willing to put in that work, you're not going to reap the benefits. And if it's easy, well, you don't really get that same mental high as when you did something that was hard. Like at the end of every CrossFit workout, I'm sure after you get up off the ground, you're like high as a kite for the rest of the day. And that's a great feeling. It's a great feeling.
Yeah, well, and something I say very often at the gym is people, like, just in general, especially in group activities, people like to complain. Like, it's just like the status quo of like anything you do is like you get to an office building and the first thing they're like, oh, I don't want to be here. And they're like, you always, like at the gym, they're like, you always just look like kind of like angry or like hyper focused. And I'm like kind of quiet there because like I'm a podcaster. I talk all the time. Like this is my time to like beat the crap out of myself. And they're always like, oh, you always just look so angry. And I'm like, I am not here to have fun. Like I am I am here to literally beat the living piss out of myself. Like that is why I'm here. Like it is not, I'm not here for amusement. You know, like this is the part of my day where it's like, let's get ready for battle. And like, I think personally, that you need to learn how to operate in that space mentally. Because once you've been doing this shit long enough, I'm going on 4+ years of doing CrossFit. Once you get to a point where you've been doing it long enough, you learn that there is a physical and a mental separation, and you learn to operate in that gray area in between where like you can kind of recognize the suck isn't going to last a lot longer, and you just have to keep moving even though your body is telling you don't do it. Like your body wants to maintain this like stasis where it's like comfortable and happy, and there is this constant battle in your head and your senses, your body's physical part is back and forth continuously of like, you don't need to be doing this, and your brain's saying, yes, do this. You like this, your own whatever wiring's going on here that makes you is fighting that. And I think that is like, that's where you build yourself. That's where you build your character, and you're not succumbing to the bullshit, because it translates to hunting. It translates to a long day out on the water fishing. Last time I went deep sea fishing, I was sick as shit, and I just like overcame it. I was like, I'm not going to let this ruin my fucking trip. You know what I mean? And it's like operating where you're uncomfortable is going to just make you become more of a hard ass in the long term. Because like, if you can operate when everybody else is shut down, you're already winning. If you can operate, that's why the best athletes in the world can operate at a max level in the least comfortable moments. Like, that's how I think about it. Every day it's a battle. It's like, I hope the workout every day is the fucking grossest, most disgusting thing, and I don't want to do it. And I go there and I just turn off my brain and I practice. I view it as a practice. I don't view it as a workout. I view it as a practice of like beating that shit out of my mind. Like, don't stop. It doesn't matter how tired you are. And eventually you just become a fucking animal because you've been doing the work as part of that, like building your mindset. It's all mindset to me. I don't give a shit if I look like a fucking silverback gorilla, you know, like I want to be mentally tough, and the physical side of that just comes by proxy. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Oh, I definitely know. And I always say that. I say a strong body builds a strong mind, and then a strong mind builds a strong life, because I feel that you build the strong mind via doing the stuff for your body, as you're saying, like doing that training, because it's freaking hard to get yourself to train day after day or week after week, or go when you're sick, or go when it's cold outside. It's hard to do, but you end up becoming this sharper person because of it. And then when you have a sharper mind, now that's when life takes off. That's when things are going to change now. But, it's the foundation is your body, which is, shocker, the foundation of actual life in general. So not surprising. But, you do those things so that when life is actually hard, you're harder than the situation. That's really what it comes down to, because, it's like, if you're a baseball player, you're going to practice. You're not just going to go play the games. No, you got to practice so that the games are easier. So you're more suited to win. And it's no different, but we just forget that. And people, take the easy way out because, they haven't died yet. You're going to, don't worry, you will.
Yeah.
your health, is super unhealthy and you're not doing anything to better that. And like, we don't need to freaking walk on eggshells around people's feelings. Like, you're obviously not helping yourself if you're not helping yourself. And by doing that, by doing the hard things, by training, by doing these things that are difficult, you're making it so that when real shit hits the fan in life, you're more prepared. Your mind is sharper, your body's sharper, your body's healthier, because who knows what shit hits the fan is. Maybe you get fired from your job and then you don't spiral out of control, but you stay focused and you move on, you start that business. Maybe it's, you have cancer and now your body can fend it off so much better. I have a buddy of mine who's going through cancer right now, and the doctor is just so shocked at how well and how like much ass he's kicking with this cancer. And the dude will tell me, he's like, it's because I was built from my life, for my entire life, like his upbringing, and he's talking to his doctor about this. It's like, my upbringing taught me to be hard, because I had a tough upbringing. So I learned to overcome, and I've always been in the gym. That's why. And the doctor's like, well, this is why you're just destroying this cancer treatment. And like, you're progressing at ridiculous levels. That's why when shit gets hard, he was prepared for something that he was not expecting. And, man, I might have to flip this table over right now. I'm so psyched.
That's what happens every time we talk.
that's what it is. I mean, it's funny. This episode gives a listener view into what our text messages are. They're either about the great outdoors, hunting, or this sort of personal betterment and training. Like, those are the three topics that we'll talk about. And then occasionally podcast tech, but not often. And usually Bigfoot. That's just like yeah. Oh yeah, Bigfoot. I mean, everyone assumes that.
Well, to put it into perspective, back to the nature side of things, like I've spent now, I forget what year I'm on. It's going on 6 to 8 years of hunting. Like, I've just been doing it, and deer hunting specifically. And the place where I got my deer this year is right outside of the front door. It's farm property that my father-in-law owns. I've been hunting that every year. And how you get something in your head and you just like don't think about it anymore? Like, you had one real world example where, okay, so the deer always, historically, I've seen with my own eyes, have always 100%. This is a thought I have. The deer have always come across the northwest side of this woodlot. It's surrounded by cornfields. There's 10-acre woodlots all over out here. It's just like islands in the middle of cornfields. So with my own physical eyes, every time I've hunted, I've always seen the deer come out of the western side towards the woods I'm hunting. So in my brain, I was like, I always need to sit over on the western side because that's where I've seen the deer. It never occurred to me to try anywhere else because that's where I've always seen them. And then this year would be my 6th, 7th something year of hunting out there. I decided, I was like, what's a day? I've wasted I don't want to say wasted. I've sat many days out here and seen nothing. Like full 5, 6, 7, 8 hour sits of just nothing. So what's another day of that to experiment?
Sure.
So I set up on the other side of the woodlot, the exact opposite side of the 10 acres that I've always been on. And I made that decision because of things I've learned. The wind was blowing out of the west towards the east. So I was like, well, if they're going to come from that direction where I've seen them historically, they're going to not smell me where I'm sitting. That makes sense. Okay, cool. Set up there. I find this beautiful little patch. It's kind of open surrounding me, and then it kind of fades off into like thick brush and stuff. I've sent you pictures. You've seen it. And I'm like, what's the worst that happens? I sit here for a day or two and I still see nothing. No big deal. The day I sat in that, I saw more deer in the 3 days that I hunted this year so far for deer than I have in the last 6 years.
Wow. That's
great. It's like, I would have never, ever, ever done that if I had maintained this creature of habit thing like that most people stay in. Like, it's easier to come home from work, watch Netflix, eat chips, go to bed. I've broken so many shitty cycles I've had in my life by like going to that edge and like pushing the limit of where is like my comfort level. Because it's easier. I have sedans permanently built out there that I could just go sit in. I don't have to set up shit.
Sure.
And I was like, but I also am a continual experimenter. And I set up over there 3 days. I got a deer. Yep. 3 days. Last year, I spent 45 days in the hunting blind trying to shoot a deer and I got nothing. Mm-hmm. Like that mental toughness is translated to so much because I didn't want to put in the work to go try something new. I was being lazy. I decided to stop being lazy for 1 day and I hit the freaking gold mine. And also the stuff you hear about hunting, the general consensus with hunting, which I know you've heard, you're going to shoot a deer at sunrise or sunset. Across the board, anybody who's ever hunted is going to tell you that. I was like, usually I go in by 9 a.m. I'm like, that's been my 4 hours since sunrise or whatever, 6 to 9, 6 to 10. And I'm like, okay, on this day that I didn't have to leave my house until 12:30, 1 o'clock to go to something, a family event. So I was like, I'm just going to stay out here to the last possible moment. I saw more deer in like a 10:30 to an 11 o'clock window than I saw ever at sunrise or sunset. Hunting in the middle of the freaking day.
Sure.
And I was like, all of this because I decided to not be lazy for 1 day. And I learned more in 3 days of deer hunting this year than I have in the previous 6 years. So it's like that mental toughness, that willingness to break out of this like weird mental patterns you have and just experiment and try something different. It pays off everywhere. Every part of your life, if you can learn to operate in that discomfort and putting in a little bit of extra work aside from what you normally do, is going to pay off tenfold every freaking time. Every time, dude.
Yeah, but then that's hard though. No one wants to do things that are hard.
Well,
it's so much easier. So much easier to just pop some crappy Netflix show on for the 6,000th time.
I'm not a self-help person. You know what I mean? Like I say this a lot, and it might sound bad, but like if you don't want to get your life together and like bust your ass and work hard, I'm sorry, but that doesn't affect me. That sucks for you. You don't. Right. I know how much it sucks to do hard stuff, but I also know how much better it is than not doing it.
Yeah,
but I don't have to convince you. I don't have to convince you. I'm already doing it. Like if you want to complain and have shitty time, dude, go ahead. Like I'm out here having a blast. I suffer an hour a day. I'm good to go after that.
That's exactly my mentality with Seek to Do More. It's like I've put together this lifestyle. I put together this like checklist for your days, and it's like it's to hold. You make the rules within this framework as to what is sufficient for you. Like the effort comes down to your effort. You choose. What are you happy with your effort today? If so, then check that box. You're good. Move on. Because at the end of the day, you don't need to obey someone's rules. You need to make the freaking rules, but you need to be holding yourself accountable so that you are pleased with your effort. If you don't hold yourself accountable, it doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect the guy down the street. You're the only one who is going to be negatively affected by it. And then if you do things well, you can positively affect many people, but you're ultimately the only one negatively affected by things when you do not hold yourself accountable to do the things that need to be done in freaking whatever it is you're doing. But that personal accountability, dude, it is the real deal when you don't need someone else to hold you accountable to do jack shit. It just really is.
But then when you start getting the positives of all that stuff, like my podcast doesn't have millions of listeners. I don't have this massive outdoors brand, but I get free fucking custom fly rods and I get to travel all over. And it's like good things happen because I just work really hard. And then people want to shit on you like, you're so lucky. And I'm like, lucky? I haven't made $1, dude. I'm like out here. I'm working because I enjoy what I do and I like the challenge of this stuff. Yeah. And I get to do a lot of cool stuff just because of what I've built myself. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying other people haven't helped me. Like, I have friends all over the country that invite me to do cool stuff all the time. And that's just because I've done this podcast. Like I've visited you. I've been all over the country with my friend Chester. I get cool outdoors gear like that I would never normally buy because people respect the work that I do. And like, that's cool. And then people that don't put in that work get mad about it. And it's like, well, you're not doing anything. Like,
you put yourself out there, though. You put yourself out there, and that therefore, like, good things freaking come from it. You put yourself out there, you go to the gym, good things come from it. You choose to eat the right things, good things come from it. You decide, okay, you're going to make this podcast. Great. Well, look at all the experiences you've had from it. Like, good things come from it. Good things are not going to come when you just wait or just bitch about needing to make certain changes or wanting to do certain things, but then there's no action behind it. Well, ultimately, you're only going to affect yourself negatively also.
Negatively. I 100% agree. So we went off the rails on that. That was awesome. I love that. Well, that's just what we normally talk about. But I mean, it all applies. That's the thing, is like, it's all helpful. Like, if you can't build that foundation for yourself, you're always going to be floundering around. And even like building the foundation, it all starts, in my opinion, with the physical foundation, 100%. Like, I'm with you on board with that 100%, but all the rest will follow, because that's the toughest part. The physical part is always the toughest part. Like, reading is easy. You just sit down and read. Like, it's not that complicated. Like, there's no magic formula. Like, eating healthy is not difficult. Don't buy chips. And people are like, you don't understand. Like, if anyone understands.
Oh, I understand. All right.
I text you all the time.
I fight every day.
I would much rather be sitting here drinking beer and eating Reese's peanut butter cups like any day of the week than going to do this. But I'm making a choice to not do it over thousands of repeated options of choosing the good choice. One in every 100, I make the wrong choice and weakness gets me. But then I just start the next day again. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Okay, I screwed that up. So anyway, we could talk about this all day. I know you've got some stuff that you've been working on. You've become quite the freaking author since we started becoming friends quite a few years ago. You've put out like 37,000 books at this point or something like that. Every time I talk to you, you're like, I'm writing. So how did you is that a choice you made too, to decide to write? Because like, for me, writing is like pulling teeth. I'll make a 3-hour documentary, but then I'll write I have to write for Texas Fish and Game, and I'll write like 1,000 words, and I'm like, oh God.
Yeah. Writing has become like literally in my life the most unforced organic growth of anything, arguably anything I've ever done in my entire life.
That's awesome.
So it's like, I take all these different things I did in my life, like back when I was in a band. Man, we scratched and clawed for every tour we got, the record labels, for getting money from the record label, like everything. And then my career, like in the film industry, I mean, I scratched and clawed to get in and grow. Like, I earned every second of it. The writing thing, though, was never on my radar, but it organically grew because. So for my podcast, began by me writing the stories of my journey through the Adirondack High Peaks, because I found it easier to write the story out and then act the story out than just, kind of freeball it on the microphone. Because I was, I had recorded some episodes freeballing, and I was like, oh, I forgot to say this. I forgot to say that. I was like, oh, if I write it and I write like I speak, then I can make sure I get every little fact that I want. So that's what I did. And then I wrote all these episodes. I just kept writing. And all of a sudden it's like, I write all the time. That's so bizarre. I talk about something I never would have expected. Dude, I mean, I literally am the guy that in 11th grade, I made up a book and wrote a book report about a book that I made up because I had not read a book. My buddy Dan and we wrote the book report for this book the morning it was due in the study in the library, school library, because like I wasn't going to read a book. And so we made up a book called like Bringing a Knife to a Gunfight by Jason Scroggins, who was a friend of ours. That's how not on my radar writing and reading and all this stuff was in my life growing up. But by just doing it organically with this podcast, it grew. Then I decided, okay, I'm always getting asked these same questions about the Adirondack High Peaks. Okay, let me just like write an ebook and write a book and sell. So I just did. I'd already answered these same questions 1,000 times. So I was like, I already know the questions people want. So I answered that, I wrote that, and then that snowballed into another book, which snowballed into writing these stories. And it's just like, dude, it's been very organic. And so the first book will come out with a publisher in March. I'm currently working on the second one. And then there's like ebooks that I've done as well. So it's like writing it's just kind of naturally happened. But you know how, so you'll understand this. What is the normal progression for anyone who is in like a heavy band when their band breaks up? What do half the members end up doing? They end up starting an electronic band. Why? Because they don't need anybody else. You can just do it all yourself. Yeah. So I actually honestly feel like the writing thing is kind of that same premise because it's just me and a computer.
Yeah.
I don't need anything else. And I work in the film industry, so I'm well aware of like, things when people write scripts, because it's like, oh, budget this and budget that. And, oh, I don't know if they're going to have the budget for this. So we got to rewrite the story. It's like, dude, when you're writing stories, you be as crazy as you want. There's no budget. It's just words. Yeah. So I think because of all those things, it's just really naturally progressed. And, I wasn't seeking out a publisher by any stretch. I just was approached by one who actually, the dude ended up listening to my podcast, and then he reached out to me because he is a publisher for a certain company that does, these outdoors things. So I was like, wow, this is crazy. And it's just kind of snowballed. But writing has become a thing that I'm into. And I've even told my wife, I said, hey, I need you to encourage me to never stop writing because this is the most organic thing that has ever occurred. So I'm pretty psyched on, and that has snowballed into, instead of just writing Adirondack outdoor stuff, it's snowballed into other writing endeavors, like with Seek to Do More, for example, or just, I've really learned to hone my voice in my writing. And that's, it's something that still kind of wows me, but I've, been, for this next book, I'm taking things that I wrote 5 years ago now, and, including some of the stuff about some of the trails and stories. And it was like, I read those scripts and I'm like, wow, my writing has drastically improved, just leap years since then. So it's cool to see that progress because, wow, I've actually been writing. It's just bizarre. Even I tell, friends of mine from high school, they're like, you have a book coming out, or you wrote a book? That's so crazy. Yeah, it is crazy. It even wows me, but, I'm really into the idea because it's just me and a computer and my brain. So I like that.
Yeah, that's really awesome, man. That's how I feel about making documentaries and stuff. It just feel like it's not a chore. It just feels natural, and I really like doing it. But so that's awesome that you found that, and it's kind of wild once you start going down that path of trying to not suck. The stuff you find out that you like to do. It's just weird. You don't even try to figure it out. It just happens, and you're like, I guess I like writing. I didn't. Well,
that's the thing. And it's like I didn't make this active decision to I'm going to start writing, or nobody was forcing me to do it. I just did it because it was going to make my podcast better, because it was going to help me personally. And then I just, like we've talked about, I just kept doing it. And then I just kept doing it, and it's, evolved to, being a published writer at this point, which is cool. The book, so I've sold, my ebooks that I've sell on my website. I've sold over 700 copies of that ebook, which, it's in writer term is probably not many, but for me, it's just I'm just some Joe Schmo. That's 700 people that have thought that my writing or my book was, they deemed it worthy of their hard-earned dollars. So that is a freaking privilege. So it'll be exciting. Just like I remember being back in my band days, being on tour and going into FYE and Best Buy and seeing my band's albums in the store. It'll be just as cool to see this freaking book on a store shelf. It'll be a really wild experience, come the spring.
Yeah, I'm stoked about that for you. That's
Me too.
A new word. Coin that.
Very stoked. Super stoked.
Well, you and I could literally talk for 6 hours straight, probably. So I want to wrap up here. But you got any parting words of wisdom that you haven't already dropped on the audience? They're probably I didn't sign up for a freaking self-help podcast.
I know.
Sorry, folks. That's where we're at.
Yeah, with us. You're getting Bigfoot. You're getting hunting outdoors, and you're getting not being a bitch. So ultimately, I would just tell people to just stop being a bitch. Force yourself to do things you don't want to do, because I bet you'll like the results you get when you're done.
Amen. Well, where can people find you? I know 46 is a big deal by you, but out here in the Midwest, we don't have any mountains. So let them know.
Yeah. No, you got lots of hills over there, right? You find me on Instagram at 46 of 46 podcast, or my personal page at James Appleton 46, James Appleton on Facebook, and 46 of 46.com. I appreciate being on here. I listen to your podcast pretty much every Sunday when I'm out shooting my bow in the front yard. So keep it going.
That's a good habit. Talk about good habits right there. Everyone should do that. Shoot your bow while listening to my podcast. So thanks, James. And take it easy, man. It's good to talk to you.
You too. Later.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Aptitude Outdoors podcast. If you're getting anything out of this, if you're learning something, if it's helped you in any way, go down in the link below and buy me a coffee. Throw me $1, throw me $2. We greatly appreciate it. Just using it to keep this ship afloat. So thank you very much.